Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm Liz Mangus, Literacy Specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. We are very excited to bring you this webinar today. As you are logging in, please locate your control bar, which is at the bottom of your web browser window. That is where you will find all the usual suspects, the chat, the Q&A, and the live transcript options. We love it when you interact with us through the chat, so please be aware that when you select chat, there is a little option to select who sees your comment. Please select everyone so that everyone can see what you have to say. If you don't select everyone, there's only a handful of people who see it, and that's not as much fun. We want everybody to be involved. So if you could remember to select everyone, that would be awesome. If you have questions, please use the Q&A area, and that can be questions for Saddleback, or it could be questions for our presenter today, and we will get to those either at the end or throughout the session today as we can. If you would like to take advantage of subtitles, please select live transcript and then show subtitles, and you will be able to see those. Those are kind of a newish thing in Zoom. We'll get started right at 3 o'clock Eastern time. In the meantime, while we're waiting, if you could go to Twitter and follow us, we would appreciate that very much. Let everybody know you are joining us for this great learning opportunity today. Saddleback is on Twitter, and the authors of this fabulous book are on Twitter, lead author Sydney Snyder and Dr. Diane Staehr Fenner. Go ahead, give us all a shout out. Let everybody know you're joining us today. We would greatly appreciate that. All right, we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Let's talk to Diane. How are you today? Uh-oh.
I'm doing well. I was on mute. I was just typing in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
Multitasking. I'm doing well. I'm here in the DC metro area, Fairfax, Virginia. It's a nice sunny day. I'm really happy to be here.
Welcome, and thank you for being here. I want our audience to know that we have been working with Diane to get her on this webinar for many months now. So this has been a much anticipated day for all of you too. I can tell by the excitement on Twitter and in the chat that you are ready for this session today. Hi, Erica from Pflugerville. I am nearby in Round Rock. It's nice to see you. Hello, Des Moines, Iowa. I know we had quite a few international registrants today as well, so they may be popping on as their time zone allows, I guess. I suppose if it's in the middle of the night, they may want to catch the recording, which I completely understand.
Yeah, I see we have someone from Indonesia.
Oh, welcome.
Yeah, and some friends from Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada that I've worked with previously. Yeah.
Welcome to our Canadian friends. And Madrid, Spain. Excellent. Oh, see?
British Virgin Islands. Wow.
Welcome, everybody. This is going to be a great session. I know that a lot of people know about this book and are raving about it, and it's a topic that everybody wants to know more about. Exotic Connecticut is in the house. Christine, welcome. All right, well, it is time to get started. So let's officially launch our session today. The topic for our webinar today shares a title with this great book that we want you to know about: Culturally Responsive Teaching for Multilingual Learners, Tools for Equity. Lead author Sydney Snyder and Diane Staehr Fenner. They worked very hard on this book, and shout out to sketch notes by Kate as well. If you haven't seen this book, it's beautiful. I highly recommend it. Great information, great layout, very visually pleasing. And there will be a raffle to give away one of these books today. So definitely stay tuned. All right. Our presenter today is Dr. Diane Staehr Fenner, and she is with Support Ed. I wanted to formally introduce you to her, but my notes fell down. Of course they did. Okay, now we can formally introduce you. So Diane is author and co-author of several books on English learner and multilingual learner education, and she's president of Support Ed, a women-owned small business based in the Washington, D.C. area that provides professional development, technical assistance, and curriculum and assessment support to empower English learners, multilingual learners, and their educators. So welcome, Diane. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to let you take it from here. Let me do a stop share.
All right, and I will start my share. Hopefully, let me know, is that working?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Let me just kind of like rearrange my monitor here. Okay, great. So yeah, so I'm going to be talking today about culturally responsive teaching from multilingual learners. As Liz said, this is me on a really good day. This is me on a pretty decent day. So I'm the president of Support Ed. This is my Twitter handle you see here. And I'm a former ESOL teacher, dual language assessment teacher, and ESOL assessment specialist. Working for quite a few years, working overseas and in Mexico and in Germany, and also in Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia, where I still live, and my kids are now in Fairfax County Public Schools. So I'm really very happy to be with you today. Let's see, so I did want to start off, and we kind of started with this little place of gratitude during the pandemic, realizing everything that teachers have been doing, and also what you had to do to be here today. I know we've all kind of been zoomed out a bit, so you're here on Zoom, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you. I'm glad you're here, and glad for all you had to do to be here today with us. So just very happy to be collaborating with you, with old friends and new friends from around the globe. So our session today, so I've got 3 objectives for you. We're going to first explore the role of culture and teaching and learning for multilingual learners, or MLs. Then we're going to discuss 5 guiding principles for culturally responsive teaching for multilingual learners. And then at the end, we'll use practical tools to apply the guiding principles to your work. And we only have about an hour today together. So I'm going to warn you, I'm going to show you a lot of material, and it's going to go pretty fast. I kind of, it's a balance, right? We could talk about one topic in a little bit more depth, but I wanted to just give you a very broad idea of some of our latest work and some of our latest tools and resources for you. And then we share a Padlet with you, and I'm going to give you that link in just a bit. You can go back then after this is over, you can watch the webinar replay and then look at all of the tools on the Padlet on your own and decide which ones you might want to look at in more depth. So I do apologize. We're going to go a little bit quickly, but I'm a fast talker, but I'll try to slow it down too. So speaking of the Padlet, we have a Padlet of resources for you, and I know my colleague Kate is going to share that link. Oh, she just did in the chat. And let me just click on it and show you what it looks like. Hopefully you can still see this. Let me know in the chat if you can't. And now it's taking a minute to load because there are like so many people on it, of course. So it's loading, but it has all of the resources and then some. So in the left-hand column, it has the session, here we go, tools and videos. I'm going to show you one video today, but you can take any of these tools, and some of them we're not even going to be using. You can click on them. I'll show you how it works. They're fetching my file, and you can take it, download it, print it. Please use this in your own turnaround training or professional learning that you're doing. So yeah, I hope you take it for a spin. I kind of went too far there, but you can scroll around on the Padlet as well and really use all of the resources there. So that is the Padlet. We'll be sharing that throughout the session today. And hi, Tanya Wardsinger, good to see you. So the content for our session today is framed around, as Liz mentioned, our new book, Culturally Responsive Teaching for Multilingual Learners. My longtime colleague and friend and co-author, Sydney Snyder, is the lead author of this book. These are the chapters that you'll see here. And we're going to be doing a book raffle on today. So what you'll do is click on the link that was just included in the chat, and just give your name and your info, and we will draw a winner at the end of the session today, and we'll mail you the book if you won. So good luck. So go ahead and take a minute to fill in the raffle. And I'm going to keep talking as you do that. Let us know in the chat if you have any kind of technical difficulties too. So I also wanted to mention that our book comes with all of these really well, I'm a little biased, really useful tools and videos. So there's a picture of Sydney and myself holding our babies. And each chapter comes with videos that we filmed in the Syracuse City School District in New York, one of our longtime partner districts. And they show what culturally responsive teaching can actually look like in practice. Sometimes it seems a little theoretical or a little abstract, but these videos show you just different ideas of what culturally responsive teaching can look like. So whenever you see this little origami crane, it means something I'm sharing with you is also linked on the Padlet. So you can take a look at those on your own later on. And also on this link that Kate shared with you, there are also opportunities to print all of the appendices from the book as well. So lots going on here. So I introduced myself a little bit. So in the chat, we're going to be using our chat a lot today. Please share how you're feeling about implementing culturally responsive teaching for multilingual learners this school year. Are you an A, are you a B, or are you a C? You can even share why you might be feeling that way. Robert Kim, he's a B, he's got this. Oh, hi, Carly, you're here. We got this together. Great. Yeah, and Tanya says, A, there's always more to learn. Yeah, this is a good way for me to just get a little sense of how you're feeling. And this is an exercise you can do too with your students in your classrooms. So just a little quick check, an A, B, or a C. Yeah, great. Well, I will let you keep sharing. Well, hi, Paula Marcus in Toronto. As you see, I'm looking at the chat as I'm doing this. So I love seeing what everyone's writing. So we're going to get started by talking about the role of culture in teaching and learning. And so we want to start off with looking at, our book is called For Multilingual Learners. We made a very conscious decision to move beyond saying English learners in our book to make sure that we're really reaching a wider audience of students. So I want to start with sharing, who are multilingual learners? So we've got here all of our students, right? Our pool of students in K-12. Within those students are multilingual learners, or we define them as students who indicate, or who their parents indicate on a home language survey, that they speak or are exposed to a language other than English or in addition to English in the home. So those are the pool of multilingual learners. They may or may not qualify for English language development or ESOL or ESL services. We don't know until they're assessed. And then within that group is a smaller group of English learners who also indicate they speak or are exposed to a language in addition to English in the home or other than English in the home, or a world English, like Caribbean English in some cases, for example. And they do qualify to receive services to support their language development. So that just kind of gives you an overview. So we're talking in our book about supporting multilingual learners. And so just to look at the numbers, this was kind of hard to get a hold of these data. We had to crunch some numbers to get this. And this is for in the US. So this is talking about the US. Sydney and I are doing a presentation for British Columbia TESOL in a couple of weeks, and we're getting the numbers, what this looks like in Canada. So in the United States, we know that English learners are about 10% of the school age population nationwide. It's about 4.86 million. But multilingual learners are so much more than that. They're about 22% nationwide of the school age population, and that number is growing. So, so we really hit upon, many, many students when we're talking about multilingual learners, and we know that others have different definitions, but this is kind of what we're using. And so we know, and probably kind of preaching to the choir here, that there's an urgent need for culturally responsive teaching. And these are just a few reasons why we have a sense of urgency. Just starting off looking at student and teacher demographics, we have a very a mismatch between students of color and teachers of color, teachers who speak a language in addition to English. Our multilingual learners often don't have a role model in their school setting. We've also seen an increase in the number of microaggressions against multilingual learners and students of color as well. So kind of brief verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, intentional or unintentional. So it could include an assumption that that a person of color is from another country, or someone asking, for example, a student of Korean origin, where are you from, when they may have been born in the US. So also structural inequities for multilingual learners. The pandemic really brought this out in very, very obvious terms, what has been structurally, programmatically lacking for our students. So these are just a few of the needs for our students to have culturally responsive teaching. Someone is asking me to increase my volume. Can everyone else hear me? Okay, it might be on your end. Let me know if you can hear me or if there are any issues. We did a check beginning and it was okay. All right. So in terms of understanding culture, you can also turn on your closed captions as well, I believe. Let's look at, so we're talking about culturally responsive teaching. Let's make sure we're all on the same page, and let's talk a little bit about what is culture, and there's not one correct answer. So go ahead and select A, B, C, or D, one of the pictures that stands out to you, and which aspect or aspects of culture does it highlight for you? Are you A, B, C, or D? What resonates the most for you and why? I've seen some D's come in so far. Great. Yeah, A, Tanya says, highlights everyday life and family values. Absolutely. I hang my wash out on the clothesline when I can. That's how I grew up on the farm in central New York. Yeah, so what resonates the most? Yeah, keep sharing. And this, again, this is something you can do if you want to use these materials in your own professional learning. This is a great way also for students to do a little pre-assessment of them, find out about what their background knowledge is on a topic by talking about images, with scaffolding, of course, for our students. So yeah, so what is culture? And this is only one definition of many, many definitions you can see here. I'm not going to read it for you, okay? So be thinking about, how does this impact who you are as an educator? What does it highlight to you? You can react to this in the chat if you would like, share what it means to you. What does culture mean for you? And to explore a bit further, we know that culture is complex and dynamic, so it's always changing. We're all members of cultural groups, and more than one, and we kind of can shift in and out of groups at any given time. And also, when thinking of culture, we have to look at ourselves and our students as multidimensional beings, right? Culture is not just one aspect of our students' lives. And within groups, there's a great amount of variability. For example, I think of when I was teaching, one of my last positions was teaching high school ESOL, and I had several students from El Salvador here in the DC region. We have a very big Central American population that I loved working with. And I had one student from El Salvador who had gone to school. He was a 9th grader, but would have been going into 12th grade in his home country, had gone to private school, very literate in Spanish. And then he came to the US he hadn't had much English instruction. So he was put in my beginning level ELD class. I also had another student from El Salvador who'd gone to public school, but had missed out on opportunities in terms of education. So these two students both spoke Spanish, but had very different literacy levels and even aspirations and expectations. So a lot of variability within that group, especially. So you're probably very familiar with the 3 levels of culture, but for those of you who'd like a little refresher, we know we have the surface level of culture. This is what we expect, right? We expect people to have differences in food and dress and holidays. So this has a low emotional impact because we kind of have these expectations. And then underneath the surface, we have a shallow definition of culture. And so this can have a higher emotional impact because we might not be expecting this. For example, people's concepts of time or nonverbal communication. And then below that is the deeper level of culture, which can really bring about an intense emotional impact. So those aspects might be ideas of fairness and justice and expectations related to gender roles, for example. So I'm going to give you a chance to do a little bit of sorting with a flippity. And my colleague, Kate Monick, who's also our wonderful sketch note artist in the book, she's here. She's going to share a link to the flippity that you can go on and click on the link, and you can sort the levels of culture. So I'm going to model how to do this. You'll have your own surface level, shallow culture, and deep culture. And we have an explanation or a definition of each. You can drag and drop it. And then we have a couple of examples for each level. So go ahead and play around with this. I'll give you a minute to kind of drag and drop. Hopefully the flippity is working for you. All you have to do is click on the link to get it to work. Flippity was down for a while, we discovered, sadly, but now it's back up and running again, thankfully. So hopefully you have a chance to kind of play around with it. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to show you just our responses for the flippity. Hopefully it's working okay with you. So let me know in the chat. What did you think of that? Could you do this type of flippity with your students in the classroom? I've been in some doing some observations this fall and seeing how how creative teachers have been integrating technology into their instruction. So this is a great way for students to talk. I would have them work in a pair to talk about this, using flippity to categorize something with scaffolds, right? So to really set them up to have these conversations that are so important. Great. So I'm also going to, just kind of whetting your appetite for the topic here a little bit. So think of this scenario with fifth graders who are multilingual learners, Leon and Lestari. They are in the same class and they're submitting the same work. They were asked to do the model of a food web, and they decided to work together. They weren't told to work together, but they thought they would do it. And both students get an F for the project. But Leanne explains to her teacher that she didn't know they weren't allowed to work together. Their teacher, Miss Morgan, says, I think you were cheating. So I have to give you an F. So in the chat, what role might culture be playing in this scenario? And what could the teacher, Miss Morgan, and or the students do to resolve the situation? What do you think? What role might culture be playing, and what could they do to resolve this? So go ahead and share in the link. Yeah, Dee Dee says collectivism is involved. Unspoken rules and expectations, do-over. Yeah, individualism versus collectivism. Thank you, Robert, for sharing that. Right. So, many teachers are not aware of what these concepts involve. So here's just an overview of the two concepts, individualism versus collectivism. Yeah. And so you can see here, I'm not going to go through, but we know individualist cultures, it's emphasis on the individual student or person, and in collectivist cultures emphasizes more interdependence and cooperation. And some countries, as you may have guessed, that tend to skew more individualist are the US, the Netherlands, Australia, for example. And then collectivist cultures tend to be, some examples of countries are Indonesia, Pakistan, Guatemala. So this can create some conflicts in our classrooms when we have students who represent different cultures, and also looking at the dominant, seeing what the dominant school culture might be. So some recommendations, always establishing relationships with our students, right? So even more important now over these past 18 months. and fostering the supportive classroom community where kids are more likely to take risks, ask questions, be vulnerable, building both individual and group accountability into projects, and giving our students choice. Would you like to work individually? Would you like to work as a group? And kind of mixing it up, giving them opportunities to do both, making sure they do both, but really kind of reading the room and being in tune with their feelings. And always celebrating group successes. It's very important, like having a class party to celebrate everyone's hard work on a project, for example. So as you think about individualist and collectivist cultures, what resonates with you? Where are your students more from? Where are they more represented? Or is it kind of a mix of both? What stands out to you? What are some strategies that have worked well for you to really address students who are individualist as well or collectivist? You can go ahead and add that in the chat if you would like. Yeah, Robert has East Asian and Hispanic students. Absolutely. And, we mentioned in the book, we really got to see individualist and collectivist cultures play out during the pandemic, right? Mask wearing, vaccinations, how people's true selves and true kind of leanings really became apparent during the pandemic. And it was, unfortunately, this is how, in many ways, how individualism and collectivism did play out. So another aspect to think about, and thank you to those that are really thinking and typing. I know there's a little bit of a lag in what we see in the chat, but thank you for sharing what you do in your school and in your settings. We learn so much from each other, so I really appreciate your insights. I'd also like to highlight another author, Zaretta Hammond, who has a book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, which really informed a lot of our work and made us think a lot. So I really recommend her work if you're not familiar with it. And she tells us about cultural responsiveness and the brain. So how the brain works, that the brain really wants to minimize threats. It doesn't want to feel this fight or flight kind of reaction. And so we also know that the way to kind of keep these threat levels down are by forming positive relationships, and they're just so critical. And she also shares so many aspects, but that some other points are that our students use their existing funds of knowledge to hang new information on, and that the brain grows through challenge and stretch, but in an environment where students feel safe, and that is very key. And reflecting on all of this, we know that we have our students' cultures, our school culture, and our teachers' cultures. Sometimes there's overlap, but sometimes they can be very disparate. And our colleague, Dr. Ayanna Cooper, who wrote the foreword for our book, she shares how they can all kind of come together. But I'd like you to think of, in one word, what's one word that describes your school culture? And share it here in the chat. And then as you're sharing that, we'll start then kind of diving into our five guiding principles for culturally responsive teaching. So what's one word that describes your school culture? As I get a sip of water here. Embracing of differences. You can use a few words too. Kindness, yeah. Disaligned, welcoming, conservative, yeah, lots of, I'm thinking if we did a Wordle of all of this, yeah, it would be quite an interesting findings. Collaborative, family unity. Accepting, conservative. Culturally inclusive, but students stick with their same linguistic and cultural group, yeah. Thank you for sharing. So now we're going to look, after we've had just kind of a broader overview about culturally responsive teaching, we're going to look at the 5 guiding principles of culturally responsive teaching from our book. So I'm just going to share each here, and then I'm going to share some look-fors for each, and then some examples of activities to integrate each one. So our first guiding principle is that culturally responsive teaching is assets-based. And then the second is that it simultaneously supports and challenges students. The third is that it places students at the center of learning. The fourth, and this is what we tend to think of with culturally responsive teaching, is that it leverages students' linguistic and cultural backgrounds. And the fifth is that it unites students, schools, families, and communities. So, usually people only think about number 4, but it's so much broader. We have to think of culturally responsive teaching within a system. So here is kind of the wider system that informs culturally responsive teaching. And I wanted to share, we're going to come to this again and refer to it at the end, but on your Padlet, and also it's an appendix in the book, we've comprised or put together a checklist and goal setting document that has all of our guiding principles and look-fors for each one. And it's a great way for you to prioritize which area you might like to focus on, and then develop some action steps from it. So also to give you an overview, I'm going to next show you a video clip. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a minute and then reshare and show you a video clip, and keep my fingers crossed that this all works. I'd like you to think of these 2 questions, and you were going to talk about them in the chat. What stood out to you from this video related to culturally responsive instruction for multilingual learners? And then what were your glows and grows? So what did they do well? What would you have done differently? And we've got these questions here in the chat. Let me stop sharing my screen, and then I will reshare the video here as you bear with me. So let me find my bar here, my Zoom bar. And now I'm panicking because I don't see it. I know it's here somewhere. There it is. I'm going to share my screen and optimize for video. So here we go. Let me know in the chat if you can hear this, okay?
I'm going to put a couple questions up on the board that I want you to discuss with the people in your group, okay? We started today just sort of with an introductory question, just sort of getting them talking in their groups, and also hopefully connecting to their own personal experiences of forced movement for one reason or another. We did that, and then we watched a quick video, just again to sort of front load some of the content so they would have a little bit more exposure to it, followed by a short paragraph of notes, sort of filling in some of the key concepts and things that will often appear on a Regents exam. Have you ever moved, and why? So I want you, as you're writing the objective, take a couple minutes to just talk in your groups about these questions. Ladies, if you're in a same language group and you want to talk in your language, that's fine, okay? Take a couple minutes to discuss this.
So from Puerto Rico, here, and then I went to Florida, and I went back here.
Move somewhere because their country problems or how the economy is.
When they move from the world, they don't choose it. They have to move to save their life. Yeah.
The reason people move, I already told them, because a veces sometimes it's because they don't feel safe, and then sometimes it's because they just want to move to take new experiences.
Do any of you guys have family that have moved to the States in the last couple of years?
Yeah.
Why?
Because sometimes, like he said, it's not safe, or they don't have enough space, or just they want to start a new life.
What else happened recently that would affect?
Or they want to start a career.
Okay.
But one of the things that works particularly well with this group of students is that they've been together a lot. So they have a lot of relationships sort of already established. So there's a sense of comfort, even to the point that at the beginning of the year, at one point, I had students that were like, "Miss, why aren't all of my classes like this? Like, I feel safe. I feel like I can talk and express myself." But again, I think that's a lot of why I sort of try and front load some of the content, whether through the video or through the notes, or through conversation about their own experience, so that then when they're diving into a document, they have a little bit of context for what it's about. I also had tablets at each of the stations where they could use Google Translate for those that have first language literacy. So some of them are real quick to sort of seek that out on their own. Others sort of need to be prodded to do it a little bit more. like my Arabic girls that sort of travel in a group, they're very good about seeking that out for themselves, and they will often have their phones out to translate and things like that. I also added some additional images to each of the pages too, so they didn't all come with a map, but I figured adding the context of a map, like in one of the documents, it made a lot of references to different states, and I knew that most of them weren't going to have an idea of exactly where Louisiana and Tennessee and all of these places were, and so I put maps alongside of it just to sort of add some additional context for them as well.
All right, guys, let's come back together for a second, okay? I heard a lot of good things. Couple of reasons that people move. Someone shout out a few. The war. Okay, maybe war. Why else? Jobs. Safety. Okay, all right. Do people always pick where they move or choose where they move to? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Okay. And did you guys get a chance to talk about, have you moved? Okay, you had those conversations in your groups. We don't need to get into all of that today, okay? But we all have various reasons for why we've moved, all right? Today we're going to talk about a reason why some people in American history moved, okay? And we're going to sort of see answers to a few of these questions in that situation.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing. And so as you know, please go ahead and share in the chat with the answers to the questions as I bring up our PowerPoint again, our presentation. So what are your glows and grows? And then we'll look in more depth about the guiding principles. So let me share here. I'm glad that the video worked. Oh, whoops, let me share that again, sorry. All right. There we go. Yeah, so what did you see? Lots of things that you saw, right? Thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope you're, reacting to what each other are saying as well. Great. So that just, really highlights several aspects of culturally responsive teaching. And I really like showing that video. It kind of brings a lot of it together. So as I mentioned, our first guiding principle is that culturally responsive teaching is assets-based. So you can see some examples here, and I'm not going to go into much depth. I really want to do kind of the more interactive things with you. So you can read here some look-fors: pronouncing kids' names correctly, spending time in their communities, learning about their interests, talking about their stories. So one example from a district we've worked with is sharing our stories of success for our students. In Jefferson County Public Schools in Kentucky, I really love this example. They needed more interpreters in the district, so they decided who best to ask? Our students, high school students who interpret all the time for their parents, right? For their siblings. So they got trained and they worked in their school district as interpreters. And I love this. And they publicized the program. So it's really important for us to be out there and be sharing our good news and success stories of our students. And so our second guiding principle is that we simultaneously support and challenge students. So these are some things to look at: their access to programs, to content. We want them to think critically and think across different curricular areas. So some look-fors are that they're getting access, scaffolded access, appropriate access to grade level content and text, and access to support for gifted honors, college prep classes, for example. We want to look, I advise you to look at your data, look at your numbers, and see how well your multilingual learners are represented in these programs. So an example of a unit that we've linked to on the Padlet here is a linguistic autobiography unit that we learned about through the California Department of Education. So it's for high school students and has them reflect on their varieties of English and accent, slang, and how they're positioned as multilingual students and with multi-dialectical experiences. Our third guiding principle, and I know I'm going fast because we're going to work with this a little bit, is students are placed at the center of learning. So we really want to give them voice and choice in their own learning, and that they're able to shape the instruction and their classroom experience. So they're helping give their opinions on content, activities, materials, assessments. I've just been doing some focus groups of older students in Maryland, and it's just so enlightening and talking to the students themselves. So often we make decisions on their behalf without consulting them. So I would really advocate for, integrating this guiding principle into your own practice, to talking with our students and getting their input. So some look-fors are that they're working in pairs and small groups. And, like I said, I've seen some just wonderful instruction taking place lately. I've also seen some instruction, and I hate to say it, where we're so used to now integrating technology, but sometimes, especially with older students, I'm seeing them sometimes one-to-one on their devices, doing their warm-up online, working with content online, doing an exit ticket all on their computer and we're missing opportunities for interaction, for pair and small group work that's scaffolded. Our kids really need to talk to each other, especially if they've been in distance or remote learning for most of the pandemic. So I would really advocate for, if we use technology, to be very intentional about getting students to talk and to interact with each other. So some more look-fors for this guiding principle are that students and teachers are working together to develop norms and expectations. You've probably already done this at the beginning of the school year. And we want our students and their parents also involved in their own goal setting and assessment, to really buy into the process and understand where they are and where they need to be. And we want them to really be able to talk and write about their lives in a way that feels authentic and comfortable and safe for them when they want to engage. Excuse me. So an example here is having students really share where they are with something as, such as a word learning strategy. What do they do if they see a word that they don't know in a text? And we've linked to this tool on our Padlet for you. What can they do? What can they do to feel more of a sense of agency, for example? And also, we're at Support Ed, my colleague Mindy Teach and I were working on a new framework of social emotional learning for multilingual learners. And one aspect that we're advocating for is that teachers be vulnerable with their students, that teachers could share what they do, for example, with this, with what you see here with self-assessment word learning strategies. What do you do as a teacher if you come across a word you don't know and you might get a little stressed out? So just sharing this more vulnerable side of ourselves as humans is so much more important now at this point in the pandemic. So our fourth guiding principle is that it leverages students' linguistic and cultural backgrounds. So we want to build on our students' backgrounds. We want them, and you see how there's some overlap between these areas. We want them to feel understood and valued and to share their diverse perspectives. So we really need to know, where they're coming from, and to know more, even more than before, about their lives, what they feel comfortable sharing with. And I see someone, Sherry, oh, hi, Sherry, in the chat. Yeah, I'm realizing for our book raffle that I don't think we have the option to put, if you're coming from outside the US. So you put Washington, but you're Canadian. Yeah, thanks. And I know we have several other people from outside the US. So you can, enter whatever feels best to you. So our guiding principle 4 are some of our look-fors is that we're really being intentional about assessing, activating, and building on our students' prior and background knowledge. and that we're also very cognizant of including perspectives in our school curricula of our students from their home cultures, for example, and that we have leaders and role models included in our students' learning. So one example is having curriculum that serves as a mirror and a window. So we want to have both types of books, of resources, not just books, but texts and videos and readings, for example. And that mirror books reflect our students' own personal identity, but also window books show them a wider experience and a wider perspective to help strengthen their sense of empathy. And boy, don't we all need to keep developing our sense of empathy to be able to see things from different perspectives and learn more about the world. So we need both of these types. So I'd like you to take a look on our Padlet. We have a tool, or you can see it right here as well in its entirety, of curricular materials. It's on the left-hand column of our Padlet. And let me just share where you can find that. And just think about the materials in your own context. And we have a few 5 criteria listed. For example, characters or people who look like multilingual learners, role models, resources that incorporate students' home languages. And so in the chat, share where are you? Are you a 1, are you a 2, or are you a 3 in your own context? Do you have very few examples, some examples, but there's some room for improvement, or many examples across content areas? Let me click on the Padlet for you and show you where to find that. So especially using technology, it's really important to model everything. Where is it? Thinking, where is it? Here we go, down here, assessing multicultural resources. So just take a look at this tool. And yeah, you can answer, Veronica, personally in your classroom or as a school, however you want to discuss. So, and that can be very different. You could have a lot of materials in your school, in your classroom, but maybe in the school as a whole, you might not have as many. So think about, kind of where you might like to look. And that's a great question to ask. So Esperanza said number 2. So kind of some examples, but you could improve. So yeah, so where are you? Oh, great. Sherry is going to do this on day 3 of the workshop that she's leading. So let me get back. Yeah, keep me posted. Share on Twitter. Where are you? And it's, it's really important for others in your school who might not be used to thinking about, things like this, to take a look and to see where you are in your own setting. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of 2s, some 1s. Thank you. Thanks for taking a look. Yeah, and just be thinking, so what are some things you could be doing to start finding some more materials? Who could you work with? Who could you collaborate with? A lot of times a school librarian or, someone in the media center can be super helpful. Or people here on this webinar today, you might want to collaborate with them for some ideas. Yeah, and so what's a step you can share in the chat that you would like to take related to multicultural resources? Oh, Sherry says that, their school librarian has bought every book that you've asked of him. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, so what are some steps you'd like to take, or what's worked well for you? Yeah, really involving the school librarian would be a great first step. And so our final, and again, I'm going fast, our final guiding principle is to unite students, schools, families, and communities. And so what does this principle entail? You can see it right here. And our goal is to really empower our multilingual learner families and to get a sense of everything, all of the assets they bring, and for everyone we work with to realize those assets as well. So some look fors are to visually demonstrate a commitment, right? So having flags up, having flyers in home languages, students seeing artwork that reflects their cultures, their languages, those kind of first impression types of physical things that students see when they walk into a building, but also having interpreters or people in the front office who are multilingual to the degree possible, having a list of students who can help help be a welcome committee for newcomers, for example, and also removing barriers that might prevent our families from participating. So what are some barriers that you see that stand in the way of your family's multilingual learners' family engagement? So you can share those in the chat. What are some barriers that you see? I'll give an example. Transportation is often a big barrier. And what are some possible solutions to those barriers? So I'd like you to think about that a little bit. And you can share in the chat, yeah. Not enough people to interpret or translate is what Julie said. Yeah, that's a huge barrier. Yes, same. Absolute economic issues. Yeah, a lot of communications go out in English, not having enough bilingual staff. And this is true every place across, across the country, in North America for sure, not being literate in home language. But we also want to think of what are some possible solutions for these barriers. Like I think of the example in Jefferson County in Kentucky, how they train their students to be interpreters. Sometimes high school students, middle school students might need service hours for graduation. Is there some way to bring in volunteers, for example? Yeah, so that's something you can think of. Kids need volunteer hours. They like to volunteer. They like to help out. That's only one avenue, one solution. Yeah, Google Translate tab added to your website. Absolutely, that's a pretty easy low-hanging fruit to fix, right? To add in. Yeah, I love that idea. Great. Yeah, highlighting to administrators. Yeah, we need our administrators to be on board, and hopefully we have some administrators here today. And if not, can you share this presentation with them? What can you do to help push them a little bit in the right direction? And so on the Padlet, we've linked to some possible barriers and possible solutions to increase our family engagement for multilingual learners. So these are some of you to take a look at. And I also want to recommend the work of Laura Gardner. I'll type her name in the chat. She has a lot of great work on family engagement for multilingual learners. So check her out if you can. And so we have now just a poll. I know I've thrown these 5 guiding principles at you pretty quickly. Which one are you most interested in right now? So yeah, oh, there's our poll. It opened up. Is it assets-based, our first guiding principle, simultaneously supports and challenges students, places students at the center of learning, leverages students' linguistic and cultural backgrounds, or it unites students, schools, families, and communities? Which area are you most interested in? Which are the guiding principles? So I can't see how many of you have voted, so hopefully we've gotten, many of you have voted. Clicked on your answer.
We have about 47% right now. So I'll give it another, I don't know, 20 seconds or so.
Yeah, come on. Maybe you haven't seen the pop-up, but go ahead and click and vote, please. It gives me good feedback as well.
All right, we're getting up close to 60% now. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Thank you for your participation. There we go.
All right, the fourth one, leverages students' linguistic and cultural backgrounds. Great, thanks. So we're going to talk about using and applying now the 5 guiding principles, and this is our last objective for today. But to do that, I want you to think about a quote from one of our colleagues in Cherry Hill Public Schools, New Jersey. And what do you think of this? You can share this in the chat as well. What's the one thing when you see the inequity about who is making strides in your system and who isn't? What is that one thing from a capacity standpoint that you can begin to ask questions about and affect change with? So I'd like you to think about this. You can share it in the chat. As you reflect on your culturally responsive teaching priorities, you can consider some of his points here. So be thinking about that. You can share what you think in the chat as well. And I did want to share some additional tools with you. These are also both linked on the Padlet. The one on the left is to explore inequity in your context. And it's very kind of in-depth tool that we've taken and adapted that will help you kind of prioritize some areas to look at in your context as well. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. It's more of like a systematic approach. And then we have a planning template for teachers and for other administrators and leaders and teacher leaders to plan a unit that is culturally responsive. It really weaves in all of these, our 5 guiding principles and some other areas to increase your awareness and your colleagues' awareness of ensuring that we're teaching in a culturally responsive way. And finally, as I shared at the beginning of the presentation, we have our guiding principle look-fors, which is a very in-depth document. It brings together all of the guiding principles and look-fors, and also a space for you to add in your own look-fors that we haven't included here. So this would be if you have, for example, a professional learning committee or a PLC, that you can come together and go through this as a team and prioritize what you might like to work on in your own context. So I hope you'll take that for a spin. And we're coming towards the end of our session today, but in the chat, share what was your greatest takeaway from today. So I'll give you a minute to share this in the chat. And then Kate, my colleague Kate, has also shared, you can still enter the book raffle if you don't have the book already. And even if you do, maybe you could give one to a colleague. So I encourage you to click on that link and sign up for the book raffle, because in just a minute, we're going to announce the winner. But in the chat, if you could share what what's your aha moment? What's your biggest takeaway from today? And I'll wait a little bit. Yeah, Lynn. Hi, Lynn. I'm wearing purple today. I thought of you. I know you like purple. Your biggest takeaway is the Padlet. Yeah, definitely, take a look at it. It will remain live. You can come back to it whenever you think, whenever you might want to use it. And Mehmet says developing an asset-based mindset. Absolutely. Yeah, cultural influences. Culture influences what you teach and how you teach it. Yeah, the resources, great. Yeah, Tanya likes the look-fors. Stephanie liked the glows and grows. Someone's asking for the Padlet again. So Kate, if you want to share that link, I appreciate you doing that. Great, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed the resources. And we have just a couple of minutes if you have any questions. Yeah, and I'm glad I'm seeing a theme of you liking the practical tools and the look-fors. So I'm glad to hear that's great feedback for me, that will be useful for you.
So now's a good time if you have any additional questions, if you can go ahead and put those in the chat. And while you are doing that, Diane, if you don't mind, I'm going to take the screen back to let everybody know who's coming up next week, and then we can circle back and get to the questions.
Oh yeah,
just
and then sorry, Liz, can I just, before you take the screen back, just
yes,
here are our objectives one more time, if it's okay. I just want to
absolutely.
Okay. We have other professional development opportunities, like an online book study on this book for 20 hours of professional development. Coming soon, we have a 5-hour on-demand, asynchronous online course you can do at your own time on culturally responsive teaching for multilingual learners. We're going to pick a winner for the book drawing. And Kate's going to share that winner, I believe, I don't know, she's going to Slack me or something, and I'm going to say that name. So stick around, or she might share it in the chat. That's
this is exciting.
Yeah.
We're all waiting.
I slacked you, Diane.
Oh, what's that, Kate?
I slacked you, so you're ready to announce it.
Oh, look. Okay. And I'm going to thank you, and I will share that as you take your screen back, Liz.
Okay, perfect.
I will direct message. I'll try the winner.
Okay. All right, and we do have a couple of questions, I believe, but of course, I always have to announce who's coming up next week, or in 2 weeks, I'm sorry, on the 21st. We have Dr. Vanya Soto joining us, and she's done some great work around shadowing and this idea of silence. How do we get our students producing language? And she's got a great book around this topic. I encourage you to join us. You can register on our website, or you will be receiving an email prompting you to register. This is going to be another great topic. And just another quick reminder that our Go ELL literacy library is now available. These are content-focused genres, high interest, low reading level, lots of great content and academic vocabulary woven in, beautiful books. Check them out. Contact me for more details. All right, we're going to jump into the questions. Let me open up the chat here. I see we've already named our winner, so we've got that taken care of. Excellent. All right, now, before we wrap up, let's get to the questions here. Joyce, I see your question, and we did provide a link in the chat that has a certificate for a certificate of attendance, and that certificate will be coming in a follow-up email after the webinar today as well. So no worries there. You will get your certificate. So Kristen asks, in your opinion, what schools around the nation are doing a great job of supporting? Are there any model schools that people can look to that you know of, Diane?
Oh, there's so many doing wonderful things, and so many teachers doing wonderful things. So I would really have to think about that. We've been doing a lot of work recently in Montgomery County Public Schools, Maryland. And there are some schools just so committed to multilingual learners and committed with administrators doing observations and ongoing coaching for years, and not just a one-day professional learning session. So I would, look at some of those schools. You can email me so I can think of some more as well, if you'd like to. We also drew from a lot of, in our book, what's happening in Canada. There are just so many wonderful examples of just different perspectives, different ways of approaching, really embracing multilingual learners. I would look to examples that, that I've seen in Edmonton, Alberta. Lynn Ferrugia is on here. She can speak to that. Paula Marcus from Toronto is on the session as well. You can reach out to me and I can put you in touch with them too, just for wonderful, inclusive examples of just creating communities that are so welcoming of our multilingual learners. We learn so much from our northern neighbors.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Robert brings up a good point. When working with East Asian students who are used to a very teacher-centered learning approach, is there anything we need to do differently when it comes to the culturally responsive teaching, especially if it's taking more of a critical thinking or creative angle that maybe kids aren't used to it?
I've seen that a lot. Yeah, I've seen that a lot in my own teaching, not only with East Asian students. So students who are used to copying and memorizing, right? To get them to move, I would suggest going in kind of baby steps and sharing, what the expectations are, but also honoring all of their educational history. This is all they've learned up until now. So I would be very careful and very intentional about elevating and honoring what they bring with them and their experience. And sometimes, honestly, if the stress level you feel is rising, let them copy something from the board. I remember my own practice. Once I had my students memorize a poem, my lowest level English learners. They did an amazing job. Because that's what they're comfortable with. So really building on that and letting them come back to patterns that feel comfortable, and mixing it up and having them engage in critical thinking. And again, honoring what they do bring with them. So, and starting in smaller steps, using content that's familiar with them. to develop these skills and to model what it looks like and to what your expectations are. So hopefully, Robert, that's a good beginning.
Thank you so much. And we're just about out of time. I think we've actually cleared all the questions though. Oh, one more question that came into the chat earlier. Where do I get the book? So where can we buy the book? I believe there was a link floating around somewhere, but it's Corwin Press, right? Oh,
Yeah,
thank you,
it's
Kate.
Corwin, right. And they can, if it's a certain number of books, they will get you a bulk discount. You can reach out to myself or Sydney, and I'll put my email in the chat. And we can connect you with a Corwin representative. They're not a big, conglomerate. They're a family-owned business. So we really like to introduce to people and to form those connections with them directly at all possible. So
great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Diane. And thanks to all of you for coming today, taking time out of your day to learn with us. Please find Saddleback on your favorite social media platform, whichever one you prefer. We are there. We always love it when you say hello. And thank you so much for everything that you do. Once again, Diane, I so appreciate you taking the time to share with us today. And we'd love to have you back again. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.